Good evening, everybody. President Trump is now polishing the fine points of his address to the nation on the State of the Union. The White House says President Trump will focus on his many successes over the course of his historic first year in office. An unprecedented year of achievements. No president has done more in modern American presidential history. Tax reform, deregulation, $8 trillion added to the market cap on Wall Street. The highest employment rates for blacks and Hispanics, the highest employment rate for women in 17 years. And ISIS terrorists devastated. The once expanding caliphate of ISIS now utterly destroyed. The president will pivot to what he would like to achieve this year. Agenda items include infrastructure spending, immigration, and trade agreements. We take up the president's vision with the country's leading political strategist, Ed Rollins, and the Washington Times opinion editor, Charlie Hurt. Also tonight here, Americans awaiting the release of the House Intelligence Committee memorandum that exposes the Obama administration's abuse of power, spying on American citizens, including the members of the Trump campaign, transition team, and the Trump administration. President Trump now has 4 days to decide whether to release the memorandum to the American public. Congressman Matt Gaetz has been urging the Intelligence Committee and the president to release that memo, asking the president to do so during his State of the Union address tonight. Congressman Gaetz among our guests here. Also, two distinguished Washington attorneys who've been instrumental in exposing corruption in the Obama Justice Department, Victoria Tenzing and Joe DiGenova, join us here. And will the president explain when that wall will be built? When will it start? When will it be completed? Answers in his State of the Union? We'll find out. All of that coming up here tonight. Our top story, the much anticipated memorandum from the House Intelligence Committee. Republican lawmakers who've read the document say it details shocking corruption and collusion at the highest levels of the FBI and the Department of Justice. And yet, Speaker Paul Ryan already pouring, some skepticism on its findings, saying Republicans shouldn't overplay their hand.
I think Rod Rosenstein's doing a fine job. Rod Rosenstein was hired after this last election. I think the people at the FBI, at the DOJ, need to clean their own house if there are problems in their own house.
Unbelievable. Ryan defending Rosenstein, even though it was Rosenstein who appointed Robert Mueller to lead the Russia collusion investigation, knowing that he was close friends with fired FBI Director James Comey. Then Rosenstein allowed Deputy FBI Director Andrew McCabe to remain in his post, ignoring his many ties to the Clintons. Perhaps most damaging of all, the left-wing New York Times says the FISA memorandum will show it was Rosenstein who approved a request to extend the surveillance of Trump associate Carter Page based on information contained in that phony, democratically funded Trump dossier. My first guest tonight says President Trump should walk into the House chamber tonight and hand Speaker Ryan a letter approving the release of the memorandum right before he begins his State of the Union address. Joining us tonight, Congressman Matt Gaetz, who serves on a number of key committees, including Judiciary, Budget, and Armed Services. Congressman, great to see you. Like all of us, you're, I'm sure, anticipating the president's remarks tonight. What are the odds of him, giving that letter to Speaker Ryan?
Well, the great thing about Donald Trump is you never can quite script him. We do know that the White House has put out statements in support of those of us who've been fighting for transparency and openness. And so there's no doubt where the White House is and where the president is. And I think there'd be no better way to kick off the State of the Union speech tonight than to announce that he will release the memo and expose the corruption that has to be cleaned up, Lou.
Well, I would be delighted, Congressman, as I know millions and millions of Americans would be. There is in this a certain calculus that I find interesting because it's a judgment on the part of the White House that this memorandum is not lurking over all of the subjects that will be discussed tonight. No one in the country, in my judgment, is more interested in any issue above that of the integrity of our Justice Department, the FBI, and what this memorandum reveals, and everyone is frankly just waiting for that memorandum to be released. With that anticipation, maybe there's a little miscalculation on the part of the White House.
Well, I can tell you that whether it's Republican offices or Democrat offices here on Capitol Hill, 8 or 9 out of every 10 calls are constituents demanding the release of this memo. The American people want to see what their government's been up to. The American people want to know the extent to which politics has infected the highest levels of our government. And most importantly, we want to know where the cancer is so that we can carve it out and move forward with reforms that make sure that this never happens again in either Republican or Democratic administration. So the people want it, the Congress wants it, and the president's usually pretty good at reading the pulse of the American electorate, and I suspect he will act swiftly, if not tonight.
Well, certainly we hope so. I want to turn to, if we may, just one of the excerpts from the president, get your reaction. If we can put that up on the screen right now, the president will say, struggling communities, especially immigrant communities, will also be helped by immigration policies that focus on the best interest of American workers and American families. Your reaction, I mean, this is, first of all, I think a sentence whose syntax is a little strained and could be more eloquent, whoever the writer was. But what sense does this make? He's talking about unifying the country, and he begins with struggling communities and starts dividing the country. I mean, this is old, if you will, liberal, hackneyed language.
Well, I think that the president always, throughout the course of his campaign, talked about an America where everyone could do better. And the folks on the political left, they have to divide the country. You see, Lou, they don't want an immigration solution. They want to keep immigration around as an issue to rally their base and divide Americans. So I think the president is working on a way to unify Americans, but I would warn him, this was not an election about DACA. If this was an election about DACA, Hillary Clinton would have won it. This was an election about the rule of law and border security, and I'll be listening for those border security themes tonight, and to ensure that we really preserve the rule of law in our immigration system and have a system that works for America first, not the rest of the world.
Yeah, I well said, Congressman. And the truth is, DACA was in the campaign. It was President Trump saying no DACA. It was President Trump saying no amnesty. It was President Trump saying build the wall. Based on what I've heard from the White House so far, I don't think that we're going to hear anything about a wall. We're going to hear about trust funds that don't have money, and there's no trust for such schemes. And if he disappoints the base or betrays the base, there's going to be hell to pay come November.
Well, you're absolutely right. People voted for this president because they were tired of seeing their hard-earned tax dollars go in the form of entitlements to illegal aliens. It costs our country over $100 billion a year, Lou, and that's why it's so important to make sure that we focus on E-Verify. We focus on ending chain migration. We focus on ensuring that we don't build magnets that draw people across our borders illegally. And I do think that we'll hear about the wall tonight, about the need to ensure that that's a critical component of our immigration reform strategy, but we absolutely cannot accept as a premise that we're going to do amnesty today and enforcement tomorrow. My voters won't accept that, and I don't think the president's voters will either.
And I hope the president won't suggest such a thing. That would be disappointing to all of us. Congressman, great to have you with us. We thank you so much. Matt Gaetz, working hard and tirelessly to get that memorandum out of the House Intelligence Committee to the president and to the American people. We're coming right back with much, much more on the president's address tonight and all that is going on behind the scenes. When we talk about immigration or trade, there are all sorts of interests, and it's amazing how the Koch brothers, the Chamber of Commerce, the Business Roundtable, all have insinuated themselves into the Trump inner sanctum. We'll tell you about that and much more straight ahead. We're coming right back. The Union address as Mr. Trump lays out his vision for year 2.
There have been a lot of things that the media has tried to distract from the successes of the president, but tonight this is his stage and his time to talk directly to the American people.
The president's agenda, we take it up with Ed Rollins next. It's all about the despicable Dems and the deep state now, the American public awaiting the release of the classified controversial memorandum detailing the Obama administration's abuse of power. We'll be right back with much more. Stay with us. Well, speaking of illegal immigration, an Obama-appointed judge has ruled that an illegal immigrant convicted of fraud has a constitutional right to say goodbye to his family before being deported. The judge insists the man's detention by federal immigration agents violated due process and that he must be released so he can get his affairs in order and, say goodbye to his family. We'll see how that holds up. We'll see if, first of all, the Trump administration challenges it. A Republican senator who wants to give amnesty to DACA recipients now admits Mexico is controlled by the cartel. Senator James Langford admits that 40 to 45% of Mexico is run by the drug cartels. He said that after meeting with leaders in Mexico, adding that it's comparable to the Islamic State's control of Syria at its peak. It's quite an interesting number, 40 to 45, not a half, not 50 or 60%. We don't know where that 50 or 60% might be, but there it is. Joining me now, Ed Rollins, former Reagan White House political director, now senior presidential fellow at Hofstra University, Fox Business contributor. Great to have you with us.
Thank you.
And Ed, as I've just shared with the audience here, and we might put that back up, the full screen, an excerpt from the president's speech in which, talking about unifying the country, he immediately divides it by referring to struggling communities, not people, especially immigrant communities, will be helped by immigration policies that focus on the best interest of American workers and American families. I don't even, frankly, I'm not sure I quite understand the sentence, but your thoughts.
That had to be something left over from the Obama administration. Now, that sounds like the kind of speech that he would make. This president has to be a polarizing president. This president is a president of change. The American public voted for him because they wanted something different than what's gone on in Washington for a long period of time. And if you want to be loved by all sides, you're not going to be effective. You've got to go out and make the differences that he's making. You've got to be tough. And this is the kickoff for the 218 campaign, and he has to basically be tough and aggressive and mobilize his base.
Yeah, I can't, as I've said here, I give this president absolute credit for being the most effective president in the first year of his presidency, more effective than any president since FDR. All of the list of achievements, and we're going to go through them here tonight. I know the president will acknowledge a few of his successes as well. But when we look at what he's doing with immigration, it just doesn't make any sense. He is risking his base. He is risking the national security. I don't even understand how, if he doesn't have that wall up before he takes any action on DACA, takes any action on illegal immigration, that he can look the American people straight in the eye and say the nation is secure against $60 billion worth of drugs that he's campaigned about, his focused attention on coming into this country and destroying lives.
As you know better than anybody, there's tens of thousands of people who have been murdered on the border over the last couple of years here, and the numbers are just astronomical. We're at a war, and at the end of the day, if you don't build that wall before anything happens, it will never happen. This is the lesson of Reagan. Reagan gave amnesty to 2.5 million voters with the promise of security. Never came about. And I would argue that Trump has to build the wall, has to have commitments for the money to build the wall and basically move forward. Then you can do other things after that's done. But you can't do it first.
Secretary Nielsen, the head of Homeland Security, the former head of Homeland Security, the President's Chief of Staff, John Kelly, both spoke in contradiction of the president about how lenient John Kelly famously saying there won't be a wall across from sea to shining sea on that border. Indeed, it seems he's right if there's to be a wall at all. Secretary Nielsen, she is absolutely an open borders person. I mean, this is getting crazy. Mark Short, Koch brothers network. It's as if the White House has been, if you will, seized by those who have an absolutely contradictory view to this president, at least a contradictory view to the president in his campaign.
Well, many of them weren't for him when he got elected and weren't for his policies even today. So someone like Mark Short, who's the legislative director, you would think he was the communications director. He's the one on TV every single day. I've been around 50 years, many White Houses, and have never seen a legislative director ever on TV. His job is to go work the Hill to find out what the Hill wants and what the White House wants, not to be on television being the communications director. I would argue very, very strenuously that this president has to sit down with his team, starting with Kelly, and saying, this is what I want, this is what I want you to implement, and go get it done. The Homeland Security chief now was his deputy, Kelly's deputy. She should know exactly what they want, and it's the president's policy, not their policy. Yeah, well, they're not going to, as we have learned, these folks mean to represent the interest of the Business Roundtable, the Chamber of Commerce, the National Immigration Forum, and they look like holdovers from the Obama administration, but in fact they're holdovers from the Bush administration, many of them, the Koch brothers, the Chamber of Commerce, the Business Roundtable, the Bushies. I mean, are you kidding me? It's business as usual. And again, the president who came in, promised to drain the swamp, be different, is now getting caught up with being the same. And if he becomes the same, because he's so hated by the other side, they'll throw him out and they'll throw his people out. He's talking about reaching across the aisle here. It looks like he's reaching across, I hope I'm wrong about this, reaching across the heads of those who put him into office, his supporters, his voters. And if he does, he's risking his base, don't you think? Absolutely. And the truth of the matter is, in the off-year election, there's a big drop-off in vote, and the reality of his vote is not energized. They won't turn out. If they don't turn out, we'll lose the House of Representatives for sure. 33 seats have been are open. Resigned. They've resigned, and historically, you always lose seats in the off year, and he's got to break that history and get more elected, not less elected. All right. Always interesting. Ed, thanks so much. Thank you. Ed Rollins. Be sure to vote in our poll tonight. The question is, do you agree with Speaker Paul Ryan's claim that Deputy Attorney General, are you ready for this? Rod Rosenstein is doing just a bang-up job. A fine job, he said. Cast your vote on Twitter at Lou Dobbs. Follow me on Twitter at Lou Dobbs. Like me on Facebook. Follow me on Instagram at Lou Dobbs. Tonight on Wall Street, I am sad to tell you, stocks closed sharply lower after a big sell-off. The Dow plunged 363 points, the S&P down 31, the Nasdaq fell 64, volume on the big board picking up to 3.9 billion shares. Healthcare stocks plunging after Amazon, J.P. Morgan Chase, and Berkshire Hathaway announced they're combining to launch an independent healthcare system that will provide for their own employees, about 1 million employees. Bitcoin plunging 12%, trading below $10,000 after Facebook announced they will no longer promote ads for the digital currency. And home prices continue to rise because of a short inventory, gaining more than 6% in November, hitting new highs. A reminder, listen to my reports 3 times a day, coast to coast, on the Salem Radio Network. Up next here, the president will call for a wall, we're told, in his State of the Union speech. Now, will it be a wall? Will it be a wall system? Will it be a trust fund of some kind, but perhaps not for the entire border? We don't know. We don't know if it'll ever be built. In fact, we'll have a live report from that very place, the border, where it matters most. Stay with us. We'll come right back. I love California. It's been 3 years since the city of Stockton filed for bankruptcy, so they're doing the next logical thing, of course. Now they're handing out free money. The city's 26-year-old mayor plans to give randomly selected residents a basic income of $500 a month for doing absolutely nothing. A much sweeter deal than the city of Stockton gave its bondholders, who took a 50% haircut when Stockton defaulted, or Stockton city employees whose pay was cut and whose retiree medical benefits phased out. Wow. And now $500 for nothing. President Trump expected to make a big push for his border wall during tonight's State of the Union. We'll see. And although there's no official funding for it yet, prototypes undergoing rigorous testing in San Diego. Fox News national correspondent William LaJeunesse is in San Diego at the border and brings us up to date on what is happening out there. William.
Yes, we've got 150 across already.
San Diego before offense?
Make it about 60 or 70 heading for the big parking lot.
And after. Apprehensions down 95%, according to the Border Patrol.
They're making their move. Multiple bodies jumping off the fence.
Yuma before offense and after. Illegal traffic down 90%.
That's Mexico. And then on the other side, you have a secondary fence.
Call it a wall or a fence, critics claim they don't work. But those who actually work here say they do.
It reduced the amount of traffic, the flow, migration, and drugs that was coming across the border.
The evidence shows that barriers work.
Homeland Security teams took jackhammers, saws, and torches to the latest prototypes.
When you walk up to those prototypes and you see a 25 to 30-foot wall, it's daunting.
Tactical teams tried climbing the walls. Only one made it to the top, but couldn't get down.
Will they scale it? Will they tunnel under it? Yes, but if you discourage as much as you can on the onset, you're dealing with a smaller portion that you now have to push technology, manpower, and other assets at.
Based on topography, need, and budget, each border sector will extend an existing fence, replace an old fence, or add a secondary wall, allowing agents to apprehend immigrants in an enforcement zone.
I don't think Democrats are saying no to a wall, no to physical infrastructure. What Democrats are saying is let's be smart about it.
So testing on those prototypes was just completed. They represent the next generation in border fencing. Are they needed? Well, agents will say in the very remote areas, probably not cost effective. In urban areas like this in Tijuana, definitely so. One reason why, that rusting border fence you see down there is 30 years old. It was a landing mat. It wasn't meant to be a fence. The gray fence, about 20 years old. Agents say an illegal immigrant can jump that fence and cut a hole in the other one in under 2 minutes, whereas these new prototypes, that would not happen. Lou?
William, it's fascinating to hear Ali Noorani, who is the head of the National Immigration Forum, saying Democrats want smart stuff. You know, the reality is fences work, as you're demonstrating here tonight, as I know you'll be demonstrating as well tomorrow and Thursday as we continue a series of your reports from the border. But the fact is, Democrats hate the fence because it actually does work. The same reason they hate E-Verify, because it reduces the magnet that draws illegal immigration.
And, you know, that's important because if you're a border agent, here's the message that's being sent. If a guy gets past you, does it mean that he can live in the United States unobstructed without fear for the rest of his life and raise a family? What kind of message is that sending to the border agent with just they get by you and then, hey, it's hands off, interior enforcement, worksite enforcement, no one has to go through the computer check? Is that really fair to the agent? Many here would say no.
And
Lou?
the question is it fair to working men and women in this country who are competing for jobs with illegal immigrants? Is it fair, in point of fact, to all of those people, 1 million of them who come into this country legally each year, who suddenly will be behind the lines of illegal immigrants? Many would say, as you said, William, no. William Lajeunesse, great to have you with us. Great reporting. Look forward to seeing you tomorrow night. We're coming right back with much more. Stay with us. The swamp is draining, but slowly. Andrew McCabe has been ousted, but there are a lot of other swamp creatures. We'll be talking about DOJ and FBI corruption. Attorneys Joe DeGenova and Victoria Tensing join us next. And these kayakers watching sea lions in Monterey, California. They're about to get the thrill of a lifetime. We'll have the exhilarating video for you next. We'll be right back. Stay with us. This committee ranking member Adam Schiff just having a fit about the Republicans wanting to release and releasing the FISA abuse memorandum.
I think we have crossed a deeply regrettable line in this committee where for the first time in the 10 years or so that I've been on the committee, there was a vote to politicize the declassification process of intelligence and potentially compromise sources and methods.
Oh, no. But here is Congressman Schiff, who's urging such care. He's the congressman who actually read the discredited Fusion GPS dossier into the congressional record in a hearing on March 20th of last year. Yes, the dossier that was not vetted, that was not verified, and that has been utterly discredited. Quite a partisan Congressman Schiff, isn't he? Well, joining me now Two of my favorite people in Washington, D.C., Victoria Tensing, a former Reagan Justice Department official, former chief counsel of the Senate Intelligence Committee, Joe DiGenova, the former U.S. attorney for the District of Columbia, founding partners of DiGenova and Tensing law firm. Joe, Victoria, thank you both for being here. Let me start out, Victoria, let's start with the memorandum. The president is being very careful here about talking about whether or not he wants to release that memorandum. I'm very proud of the Republicans on that committee for getting it done. Your thoughts?
Well, they're doing it the right way, and well, they should, because Chairman Nunes got in a little bit of trouble when he came out and made an announcement outside of the White House after he saw these I think, the documents are the basis for this memo. So they're going through the right procedure, and oh, lo and behold, they're insisting that the Democrats go through the right procedure for their report, and
Deputy Attorney General. I about fell out of my chair. Your thoughts?
Well, I think Rod Rosenstein made one of the worst mistakes in the history of Washington law. He appointed Bob Mueller, who never should have been appointed because he's a close personal friend of James Comey and just about everybody else involved in this. But Rod did something worse. He created a mandate for Mueller which had no limitations of time, money, subject matter. He didn't even name a crime that was being investigated, which was a violation of the Department of Justice regulations. I think when all is said and done, Rod Rosenstein's memorandum and the appointment of a special counsel will go down in history as one of the worst decisions ever made by a Justice Department official. There never should have been a special counsel because there was no evidence of any crime.
Hey, Lou, I want to follow up on that because the mandate that Rosenstein approved is just shocking for us lawyers, and that is that Mueller can investigate any link, this is a quote, any link between the Russian government and anyone associated with the Trump campaign. Now, goodness gracious, do you know what? An Iowa farmer who sells corn to Russia and is supportive of Trump could be taken up in that mandate. It is frightening.
And I want to ask you both this. I mean, everyone is acting as if all of this is irreparable. The president thinks about firing Mueller, apparently, but decides against it, and the New York Times has a conniption trying to make thought a sin, and secondarily, everyone, Democrats and Republicans alike, seem to suggest that this is irreparable in any way, this broad, ambiguous mandate for the special counsel. Is that the case?
Well, here's the thing, Lou. We must never lose sight of the fact that the senior level of the FBI and the senior level of the Justice Department during the Obama administration decided to do two things: exonerate Hillary Clinton from her email server scandal, and then, if she didn't get elected, to frame Donald Trump with a non-existent crime. This is one of the worst things in the history of our country, and to think that a special counsel was appointed to investigate the president, who's done absolutely nothing, is a disgrace.
And we have, Victoria, at this point, no evidence whatsoever that's been produced as 5 committees proceed with their investigation. We added it up. This is a couple of weeks now out of date, but we figured it was 6.5 years of investigation of collusion, which no one can define as a crime.
Right. Any guest who comes on Fox should be asked by the host who supports the special counsel should be asked, could you please tell us the 18 U.S.C. number that whatever collusion, even if there was collusion, violates? No one can tell you, and that's what's frightening, because the criminal law is supposed to be very circumscribed. It's supposed to, people are supposed to know what it is that violates the law, and you can't say that an Iowa farmer selling corn to Russia is a violation of law.
A sense from both of you as we wrap up here, and I'm sorry we're pressed so much for time, but a sense from both of you is to where do you think this is going to lead? Are we going to see inside the obviously corrupt upper levels of the Justice Department and the FBI? Is there going to be resolution here? Your thoughts, Joe?
Yeah. Yes, there's going to be resolution. The memo from the House Intelligence Committee will be the start. Next will come the Inspector General's report from the Department of Justice, which will be devastating because it will show that Andrew McCabe made FBI agents fabricate evidence to exonerate Hillary Clinton. And then there's going to be a federal grand jury to investigate the Obama administration's senior Justice Department officials and the senior members of the FBI. The grand jury will be coming shortly.
Victoria, you get the last word.
One day, the rest of the media will be on board and report this.
Victoria, thanks for being with us. Joe, thanks for being with us. We appreciate all both of you do. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Lou.
Bye.
Please roll the video now. We're going to show you a group of kayakers in, whoa, we're going to show you a whale tail. In Monterey Bay, California. The tail getting very close to that massive humpback whale, breaching just feet from the unsuspecting kayakers, giving them and all the rest of us who see their video now quite a thrill. Very impressive. Up next, the Dems are in disarray. They don't know what to do. President Trump's historic successes in his first year have created huge unforeseen problems for the Dems, with Republicans likely to add to their majorities as it stands now in the House and the Senate. But they could still screw it up. Let's see about that. I'll take that up with Charlie Hurt, and that's next. Stay with us. We'll be right back.